Hello everyone, and welcome to the second in a series of alumni afterthought sessions that we're running as part of the Social Sciences Careers Week, which is brought to you in collaboration with the WRDTP. Before we start, before I introduce our chair and guest speaker, I just want to run through a couple of things about how the session will work today. There will be around 30 to 40 minutes of discussion between the chair and our guest speaker. Following this, we will open it up to a live Q&A. Please do use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen to submit any questions throughout the session, and we will pick up as many as possible during the live Q&A section. You'll notice at the bottom of your screen there is captions. You are welcome to turn these off. If you hover at the bottom of your screen, it should give you this option. So without further ado, would love to welcome on our chair, Rachel Roberts, and our guest speaker, Laura Evans from Nifty Fox. I will now hand over to Rachel, who's going to lead the session.
Thanks, Josie. And welcome, Laura. It's great
Hello.
to have you along today.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Not at all. So, just to introduce myself, I am the careers consultant for researchers at the University of Sheffield, and today's session is all about learning more about Laura and her career and her experiences and her insights. So Laura, let's make it about you. Could you give us a sort of brief overview of your career path to date?
Yes, so my life so far, if you like. Yeah, absolutely. So I did my undergrad at the University of Warwick in sociology, and then I went on to do a master's in social research at Warwick. And also I had plans to do a PhD, but life got in the way, and I actually managed to get a research position straight out of my master's into widening participation. So I did some work at Warwick along that, and then I've moved around quite a bit within different higher education institutions. So I was a researcher at Warwick, then I moved on to Coventry University and worked for their Students' Union, looking at volunteering and its effects on graduate employability. And then I moved from Coventry to Leeds, again looking at widening participation and employability for undergrads. And then I moved from there to University of Sheffield, where I was an outreach manager, again working within widening participation and having a research element to my job. And then life got in the way, and I had some health issues and decided to leave the university and take some time out. And then Nifty Fox Creative was born. So now I combine my research skills with my creativity, and I help academics in the public sector tell their stories visually so that audiences listen. So that's the abridged version of the last sort of 15 years, really.
Thank you. There's a lot to talk about. So maybe we should start with perhaps your current role and, the exciting thing that is Nifty Fox, and, tell us a bit about Nifty Fox, and I guess what prompted you to create it.
Absolutely. So as an academic, I found it really frustrating that we have this sort of publish and perish mentality. So you're only worthy if you use loads of words, get published in all these journals. And actually, I was a researcher and did that because I wanted to make a difference to the world. And I think difference and change lies in impact and research impact. And as an academic, wasn't given the time or didn't have the skills at the time to kind of get my research beyond the ivory tower to really make a difference. And so Nifty Fox was born out of that frustration, because there has to be another way. There has to be a more visual, more engaging way to engage audiences outside of universities who actually need our research and can do something with it. So to make real change. So I did in my previous life when I was teaching, and also when I was engaging with the general public and did a lot of public engagement stuff, I did things like live illustration, used visuals and visual frameworks and creative ways of involving research participants and communicating what I was doing, and it seemed to work. So when I sat down and kind of reevaluated my life after some health issues, I thought, well, I really loved the creative side of my job, but I didn't get enough time to do. And I can see a gap in the sector because there's very few people that are helping academics in particular to translate their research, to get that knowledge out there. And that's kind of where Nifty Fox was born from, really. So what we do now, and I say we because it's not just me anymore, we've got a core team of about 4 of us now. So we work with universities internationally to kind of distill their research messages into visual format. So we do things like live illustration. Some of you who were on the call yesterday would have seen me illustrating alongside the conference. So we do a lot of that for conferences, co-production of research, and also events. We also do animation and rich pictures, illustration, anything that can communicate research in a more accessible way. And that's also ranged to website design, report design. We're also investigating augmented reality and virtual reality. So we're doing a lot more of that now. So it's taking our millions of words that we like to use and turning them into something simple, accessible, and engaging for people beyond academia to make real change. So that's kind of what we're up to at the moment, which is really exciting. And I love it. And there seems to be a real appetite for it as well, as we have more of a focus on research impact, and also being much more mindful of how we as researchers kind of engage with the world around us. And there isn't this kind of power hierarchy of researchers doing something to other people. It's actually a collaborative effort for a common goal that is focused on change.
Thanks. So you've said we a few times, and you've talked about how the business, in a sense, went from you to a few more people. So I think it would be useful to get a bit of a sense of, just the diversity of your role now and the range of things you have responsibility for, because I'm imagining it's quite vast.
Yeah, so it was something that was said yesterday, actually, from the speakers. That said that being a researcher actually, or an academic, stands you in good stead because you have all of these transferable skills. So I'm taking all of the project management skills, the problem solving skills, the ability to write and market yourself skills into my new role. So my role now is kind of part creative, part project manager, part academic researcher, part marketeer, part finance person, all sorts. So yeah, so my role is really varied. If I had to put it into kind of percentages, I'd say 40 to 50% of what I do is actually the creative stuff and the doing and the making. The other 50% is all the stuff that goes along with managing a team in a business. So yeah, people management, project management, client relationships, managing that, doing stuff like this, promotion, and helping people understand what we do and kind of give something back and give some value. I've become a dab hand at Excel spreadsheets and my accounting and all sorts, but there's and you can hear our head of marketing there in the background, Ruben, who the postman's probably arrived, so I apologize if you can hear him. But yeah, it's far harder and far more varied than I ever expected. I think I started the business thinking, I just get to be cool and creative all the time and it's going to be wonderful. And actually there's a lot of kind of hard work and hard graft that goes into that, and so much more than just the fun stuff. So even though I absolutely adore what I do, and I would being an entrepreneur has been so inspiring and really helped me grow as a person, it's also been the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and the learning curve is steep and sometimes the hours are hard. And I'm really fortunate now that, we're at a position of success where, clients come to us, but in the early days, you do have to put a lot of work out there and also kind of network and get out there and people understanding who you are and trusting that you can do a good job. So I do less of that now, but that was definitely the hardest part of starting a business. Was I started from nothing. I had no job, no money, and I kind of had to make it work. So yeah, that being an entrepreneur and having your own business has all of the fun, glamorous side that you see. It definitely has some of that, but there's a darker side of 11-day weeks and long hours, and you're never really quite off. You're never really not working, which is something that does take its toll on your kind of mental health. But all that said, I wouldn't change it for the world. And as I said, you learn so much as a person, and you learn what you value. and you learn how to manage relationships so much better. I mean, I'm a massive introvert, so I've had to learn how to harness that introversion and be my authentic self when doing things like this, because you have to be quite extroverted to be a charismatic leader and for people to want to work with you and believe in what you're kind of selling. So there's been, yeah, a lot of personal growth and journey too.
So you've talked quite a lot about, you know, the upsides and the downsides of, you know, having your own business. You've also mentioned, you know, a few different ups and downs throughout your life generally, which has perhaps had an impact on the career choices that you've made. So could you tell us a bit about, you know, how you've approached different decisions that you've taken, and what were the sort of triggers for you making the choices you made at the different points in your career?
Absolutely. So I think, as I said, like my intention was to go on to do a PhD and live that very cool tweed wearing academic life. But I fell in love and I wanted to go and get a mortgage and move in with my partner. So I thought, oh, actually, I probably need to get a job. And then it just so happened that the research project that I was involved in as a master's student was looking for a research assistant. And that's kind of how I got into that. And so yeah, life happens. Like I preferred, no offense to our lovely audience, but I preferred having money and some more freedom than being chained to my PhD research. So that was kind of part of that decision. And again, the moving around. So I was very Midlands based. I'm from Birmingham originally. And then I was in love with a northerner, so we came up to Sheffield. So that's why I kind of did the Leeds and Sheffield thing, and that influenced that. And then Nifty Fox, yeah, that was a choice that I didn't initially make by choice, if you like, because I did love my job at Sheffield, working in the outreach team and being able to use my research in a very practical and applied way to help underprivileged kids get into uni and keep them there. And I would have continued to be working there had some health issues not happened. So I got glandular fever when I was in my late 20s, which when you get it in your late 20s just absolutely annihilates you. So I spent 12 months in bed. It was awful, chronic fatigue syndrome for a couple of years. And Nifty Fox was kind of, I had no money, I'd lost my job, I'd lost my way a little bit. And actually that was kind of part of the existential crisis that I was in at the time. So Nifty Fox was my way of saying, I need a positive focus to get me through this. So I started the business just working a day a week and a couple of days a week. And then it kind of gradually built up from there to where I now work full time and live a full and relatively normal life. I still have to manage my health pretty, I was going to say closely, but that's the wrong word. I still have to take care of myself. And that's another reason why entrepreneurship appealed to me, because I could have that flexibility if I wanted to. But yeah, I'm so grateful that that experience happened, because I've learned so much and grown so much. And if I'm being really transparent, I earn so much more now than I used to. And that would never have happened had I not had that experience, because I would still have been in higher education or doing my PhD at this point. And I'm so glad that I'm not, because this has kind of been a bit of a curveball that's been the most beautiful surprise of my kind of life so far. So yeah, my career decisions were never influenced by factors in my control to some extent. And I think if I were to impart any wisdom to our listeners, it would be that despite your best plans and your best intentions, life will happen to you. And so it's to have a general framework of where you want to go and kind of things that make you happy and the values that you have, but be open to opportunities when they come up and adapt. And I think that mindset has really helped us as a business in COVID, because we had to adapt very quickly in March last year, because a lot of our work was live and we did a lot of studio work. And then we've completely pivoted the business and grown as a result. So actually, some of that adaptability and flexibility has helped me as a business owner too. So have a vague plan, but don't expect life to kind of help you achieve that sometimes.
I know when we've spoken before, that, you know, it can appear on the surface that a lot of your career path has been about luck. And I know I've, you know, said to you that actually there's a career theory called planned happenstance, which is actually about taking opportunities and taking risk and, you know, maximizing networks. And I know actually your career has not been about luck and you doing the right things at the right time and it just happening to fall into place, but a lot of it has been about what you've managed and what you've created. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit more about, you know, the sorts of things that have happened along your career path that you feel have resulted in the sort of next steps in your career, and how you think others can learn from that.
What a good question. Yeah, I think I can be quite a modest person, so sometimes I attribute it to luck because that's just me being a female imposter syndrome kind of sufferer. But what I would say is that you make your own luck. So the things that I did to put me in a good position were, this sounds really cheesy, but be nice and helpful to people, network, offer your time and your expertise to help people. And I think that is what kind of grows your network, and then people start to see you as somebody who gets things done, and that's really positive. So actually some of my first clients were people that I'd met years and years ago as a researcher that then found out I had my own business and knew that I could do good stuff. I didn't know what my new business was or how I could help specifically, but they knew they wanted to work with me because they'd had that experience. So actually it was about hard work, you know, developing good relationships with people and also putting yourself out there for opportunities. And with trying to make your own luck comes risk. So I think, you know, I have taken risks that might not have paid off. And there are definitely times in my business where I've done something and gone, well, that was awful, I'll never do that again. So actually the success you see is actually just a series of failures that you then kind of fail less each time. So so just going back to kind of the advice that I'd give people, it's about networking, doing good work, whatever you're doing, and also being really self-aware and being aware of what's making you happy and what's not working, and then letting that be your guide. I think this was mentioned yesterday. As academics, we're really kind of tuned into being objective, and we must do these things in this order and these steps. And actually, you need to learn to tap into your kind of inner intuition and what makes you happy. So I was kind of guided at each point with the opportunities that were available to me, and then putting that into a matrix of what I was capable of doing at the time and what I wanted to get out of it. And then having this strong foundation of having a really good skill set that I tried to keep as varied and open and transferable as possible, so that I could pivot into any kind of role. And I don't think, you know, I want Nifty Fox to be going forever and ever, but I think if you had this conversation with me in 10 years time, it will look totally different, and I'll probably be doing something different in a career that probably isn't even existing yet. So I think the being open-minded and trying lots of things and not being too focused on what you think your passion is. I think there's a lot of rhetoric around, you've got to know what you're passionate about, and you've got to know it now, when actually you don't. Spoiler, you don't. You just need to work with something you enjoy and be open to pivoting later on.
So I know we've also talked in the past about how, you know, your values, and, you know, you've just talked there about you don't necessarily need to know what you're passionate about, find things that you enjoy. But I know you are passionate about some key things. So could you tell us a bit about how you've aligned your passions and your values with how your career has progressed?
Absolutely. So one of my big values is authenticity, and being a nice person, which seems really simple, but that has meant that I've avoided really kind of corporate roles that feel quite cutthroat and very pressured. I don't respond well to that environment. I think people work with people. So that was a reason why I got into research, because I genuinely cared about people and kind of the empathy side of, you know, as a qualitative researcher, that empathy was really important. So yeah, being able to pick clients that kind of vibe with the way I do things, I think being authentic, being friendly, being approachable, and being very deliberately not kind of this corporate professional vision that really just turned me off has been really crucial in how I've shaped Nifty Fox as a business. Another thing is I can't stand complexity. So when I work with people, I do things as simply and as streamlined as possible. And that's meant that the processes in my businesses reflect that. And that it's, you know, again, people work with people, they don't work with forms and loads of bureaucracy. And it's another reason why I've kept Nifty Fox small. I don't really want to kind of grow into a huge agency, even though we have the demand, because then that would lose the whole raison d'etre for Nifty Fox and the way we do things. So we would just lose that personal approach. And I think that's why we have so many people that like to work with us, because you talk to a human the whole way through. You deal with one human, and we do everything as we do it as a team, but you will always deal with just one person. And I think we'd lose that. Another value of mine is about equality and diversity. So as a gay woman, I choose projects that reflect the diversity of our communities, whether that's sexuality, whether that's gender or ethnicity. So I've turned down work with clients whose values don't align with mine. And you know, there was one particular project that I took on where my sexuality was a real issue, and I left the project and I said I'm not the right fit for this, and gave up the money to fit my values. So I think that's kind of definitely helped me as a business owner now. In my kind of earlier career, again, I think this idea of equality and wanting people to have, you know, the best start no matter their background was what led me to widening participation. So I was the first person in my family to go to university, and you know, I was fortunate to have parents that were pretty switched on to help me get there. But I saw lots of my friends who were really talented not have that, and I think it was something that drew me to having a real practical, applied version of the research that could actually help people do things. So I guess another of my values is about change, real change, not just change with a little c, or I'll just do this for an impact case study and then forget about it. It's actually about how can we, you know, drive real change. And this is why visuals are so important to me, because I think pictures just cut through all of that complexity. They cut through professional hierarchies, and they just speak to people, as I've been saying for the last 5 minutes. And that's just so important, that we can connect with each other as individual humans and find a way forward, than if we just put things behind walls of text that excludes 50% of the population. It just seems bizarre to me. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that's great. As you've been talking, I've also got a real sense of the mix of experience that you have, and that you combine, in a sense, you know, values, passions, but also the skills and attributes and abilities that you have generally. So could you tell us a bit about that? What are the skills and qualities and attributes that you feel you have that have made both you successful in what you've done, but also enabled you to actually establish this successful business?
Yes, if we go with the kind of the obvious ones that you'd write down for your careers advisor, let's start there. So as a researcher, like those skills were, you know, problem solving, synthesizing lots of information, making things more accessible and digestible for people, being able to take lots and lots of information about very disparate subjects and making sense of it in one kind of narrative. And that helps me in my job now, for sure. But also all those softer skills, like, as I've mentioned, you know, project management, managing your own time and being quite self-motivated and driven. As an entrepreneur, you can't be lazy. you have to have a purpose and a calling that's bigger than just the money at the end of the rainbow. So there's definitely that kind of, yeah, those softer skills. Working in a team, really important. I've learned so much about people and psychology, and learning about how my own triggers. So how, you know, some of my clients that I'm working with might not see something as a problem that would seem as a problem to me, and kind of managing expectations and emotions, and, you know, managing all of our inner child. So there's lots of softer stuff. In terms of the creative side, a bit of my history that I missed out was I actually started a degree in graphic design before I went and did my sociology degree, but got very disillusioned because I thought it wasn't academic enough. And I think if I could speak to my 18-year-old self now, I probably would say, just stick with this. You really enjoy it, and you don't need to worry so much that it's not what you think other people would think you should do. So in terms of creativity, I already had some of those skills anyway. But I think you can be a creative, but you need to have the business acumen in order to kind of make that work. So I think something that I learned from, you know, applying for funding bids and working, you know, in management, was about how you can tailor your message for specific audiences to get what you need and get what you want as well as your audience wants. So that enabled me to start a business, because I understood how, you know, how to market yourself, how to bring people on a journey with you, how to work with people, as well as the creative work. And I think, you know, I don't think I'm the world's best creative, but I think what I do really well is combine all of those softer skills, those research skills, and that creativity to create solutions to problems that my clients have. And I think that's the core of any business. As long as you can, you know, successfully and reliably solve your client's problem, you will always have work. And I think that's kind of how my blend of skills has put me in a unique position for success.
You mentioned your younger self. Is there anything else you would advise your younger self to do differently, whether that's a few years ago or many years ago?
I would recommend having therapy a lot earlier than you think you should get it. So therapy is part of my self-care. I spent a lot of my kind of late teens, early 20s with an eating disorder and an exercise addiction, because I was running away from who I actually was, trying to fit into everybody's kind of stereotypes of what I should be. So I think first of all, I'd probably say, chill out. It's not all of that important, and listen to yourself. Try and ignore all of what society and your family and friends are telling you should be, and work out who you are authentically. Because I'm still undoing some of that conditioning now, you know, in my mid-30s. So yeah, chill out, lay off CrossFit for a while, because it's kind of terrifying and really puts your body under a lot of stress. And have a bit, and I think I would recommend this to everybody listening, actually, have a bit more play, have more time to have fun. I think I wouldn't want to kind of lecture myself on the decisions I made, because I've always worked hard, and I've always, you know, I always think I'm really proud of my resilience. But I just have a bit more fun on the way, because life is, and I'm trying to give myself this advice now as well, because life's too short to kind of be so hung up on everything all the time. Yeah, and learn about accounting a lot earlier in your business too, and save more money, spend less money on clothes probably as well. Yeah, but I think, yeah, have a sense of play, give yourself a break, and work out who you truly are before you start listening to other people.
Thank you. You've mentioned this a bit already, I think, but in terms of, if you could tell us what's the best aspect of where you are currently, and then what is the worst aspect?
Yeah, the best, I mean, this is going to sound like I'm an absolute dick, but I'm not. The best aspect is having the financial freedom to do what I want to do. So, you know, even when I was working in higher education, even though the money wasn't bad, it was still not as much as I would have liked. And I wouldn't say that I'm money motivated, but the fact that, now, I'm saving for a wedding later this year, and I'm hopefully buying a house next year, and having that financial freedom, and having it, all of that hard work kind of pay off financially is one of the best aspects of what I do. Because, if my partner decides that she wants to earn more money, she can't just go into a boss and go, give me more money. Whereas I have the option to say, right, I can make some decisions in my business to reflect my life goals right now, so that I can structure myself to earn more. So I think that's one of the best aspects. I think the other side that will make me sound less like a money grabbing idiot is the flexibility to kind of choose projects that are both aligned with my values, but that are also interesting. And I get to work with some incredible people who are doing some wonderful, really important work. And it's like being the best part of research without all of the politics and the hard graft. So that is wonderful. And the opportunity to do things like this, I really love that. Part of my role and part of my job now involves a lot of teaching and kind of sharing this kind of message and my key purpose. And that's just so rewarding, because I can see that people are getting it and they're on board, and I feel like I'm making the kind of cogs of academia turn in a slightly different way. The hardest parts are, I'm quite a sensitive person, so I always find dealing with people and relationships quite challenging, because I take things very personally and always want people to be happy with the work. So I do find the client relationship side, although I'm really good at it, it's hard. It's hard work, and that can always bring up a lot of kind of anxiety for me. The other thing that's hard is that I've just come off the back of working 2 weeks straight, which I don't recommend. But sometimes when you have deadlines, you do have to sacrifice time with your loved ones, playing on your Nintendo Switch, walking the dog, in order to get your stuff done. So I suppose the other hard side is that the buck stops with me. It's my business. So if something goes wrong, I am accountable. And I sometimes have to work the hours to make up for that. So that's the hard thing. And I guess just having your mind kind of completely overtaken by your business a lot of the time. And I love that because I'm passionate about it. But as I said before, you're never really off. And I think that's the sort of the kind of the catch-22 of being your business owner, is that you love what you do to death, but you also think about it all the time. And so, there's a lot of kind of mental health issues with entrepreneurs, and I've definitely shared with my fair share of that. And I think, anxiety is just a constant companion for me. So there's definitely that. But I love what I do. I have the financial freedom to live the life that I've kind of dreamed of, and I get to work with some absolutely awesome people on some awesome things, and do things that are so creative and wonderful that I kind of pinch myself that I get paid to do it.
So I want to pick up on some of the questions that were sent in when this session was advertised. So people are asking around, you've already talked about having a creative background already, and starting a graphic design degree. Do you think there are careers in this area for people who haven't necessarily got that sort of creative ability?
Definitely. I think being creative helps, but I think as a typical researcher, I'm just going to define what I mean by creativity, because it's not about being able to pick up a pen and draw something, although that's a big part of what I'm doing. It's about thinking about a problem and solving it in an innovative way. And researchers are fantastic, and academics are fantastic at that. That's what you're geared to do. As PhD students, you are training to solve problems in an innovative way. So at the moment, I'll use this as my own recruitment platform. I'm looking for researchers that have got a knack for taking lots and lots of research information and turning it into distilled messages, because I have so many projects now that's the part that I kind of need somebody else to do, so that I can do the rest of the client management, working out the problem, and kind of sorting the creative work. So there is absolutely a space for academics that, okay, maybe you're not the best graphic designer in the world, but you can solve problems creatively and help communicate. I think communication skills, which is one that I missed off there, that's super important. It's about communicating things in a way that a lay audience can understand. So there is definitely a gap for people like that in kind of the, I guess, the closest thing to what we do is kind of science communication, although I feel a bit uncomfortable with labeling us as that. But just because we have visual in our kind of titles as visual storytellers, we look for storytellers no matter what walk of life that you kind of come from. So yes, and I think everybody's creative. It's just thinking about creativity beyond drawing or painting, really.
Thanks. And then in terms of, you've also talked about, being an introvert, and, a question was asked about what advice have you got for people in terms of boosting their confidence with communicating with others, having to develop networks with people you don't know, all of those sorts of things.
I think for me, I'd probably call myself an extroverted introvert now. I think when I first started, I just thought all people were kind of quite terrifying and kind of out to get me. So I think it's about doing some inner work around thinking, do you know what, I actually have something really valuable to offer, and I'm going to talk to these people because I want to help them. So I think building your confidence is about reframing where you are in your journey. So always thinking that you are the expert on something, because a lot of people suffer from imposter syndrome, which is basically where you think you're not good enough to speak on a certain topic, or that you're just not good enough generally. And so I think, for the introverts out there, we're learning to network and communicate. It's finding an inner strength that you do know what you're talking about. And then when you're talking to other people, see it less about how you're coming across and more about how you can help them. The moment you take your focus off yourself, because as introverts, we're like, oh my God, is my hair okay? Like, am I saying the wrong thing? Do they like me? If you can turn that voice off and focus on, what's this person saying to me? How can I help them? And how can my skills help them? It feels so much easier. And I think I have returned networking in my head to finding out about people, because networking for me sounds and feels the concept quite sleazy and quite scary. So I don't refer to it as networking. I think about it as, we're just going to go and have a chat with a nice person and see what they're up to. And kind of go into those encounters with an open mind and wanting to help and wanting to learn, rather than thinking, oh, I've got to be this perfect person, I've got to sell them something, and oh, what if they say no? And yeah, being okay with if you do get a no, because not everybody will be the right fit for you. So yeah, I guess it's, and I also owning your introversion sometimes, because I need more time out than an extrovert does. So I think it's about planning your time and your diary so that you can have time for you to kind of reboost your energy. So own that you're an introvert, but just push yourself a little bit out there to kind of be nice to people.
Thank you. Now I'm going to have a look at some of the live Q&A that's coming in.
Yes.
So someone's asking, or thanking you for sharing your health story and talking about how relevant it is to their own circumstances.
Yeah.
How they're finding the flexibility of doing a PhD more helpful for managing their condition than previous roles where they've been employed. So they're asking about whether you could share more about, how having your own business is better for you in terms of managing your own health, especially as you've talked about, 11-day weeks.
Yeah.
And what your advice would be for anyone,
Yeah,
being at that crossroads you found yourself in back then, and having to find a suitable role for them.
Yeah, and I want to kind of caveat, the 11-day week was not something I chose to do at all. And I suppose I took a few days off to kind of recover, but actually more than a few days off to kind of balance that. So for me, when you're at that crossroads, I think I actually found having my business motivated me and kind of helped me get through that period because I had a focus, and that's super important. But I also would say start small and give yourself a lot of flexibility in terms of deadlines, so that you've got time to kind of roll with what's happening for you in terms of your health. That's a very practical thing. But I'd also say, and this is my experience, so I'm not trying to project it onto somebody else, but for me, having goals of how I wanted to incrementally improve helped, because it was like, right, by the end of, in 3 months' time, I want to be working 2 days a week, and then by 6 months' time, I want to be working 3 days a week. So using the flexibility to help you move forward and find ways to kind of manage your health, but also gradually improve it, was really useful to me. And I would also say that, I try and travel as little as I have to, which has been great the last year. But I think I always try and match my work output with energy input. And I don't always get it right. And as a type A personality and a perfectionist, I'm likely to trip up many, many times. But I think it's about just having a balance. And I've also taken on work. I try to take on work that has, that brings me joy, which sounds very Marie Kondo. And I try to avoid work that just makes me feel like I don't want to do it, because that's a sap of your energy too. So I think it's balancing, your emotional and mental health with your physical health, and kind of making sure that your deadlines are flexible, and be open about it too. I think I'm really open with my clients when I'm having a bad day, or whether, I said something would be done by a certain day and it's just not worked out that way. So I think it's also being open and not ashamed that that's something you're dealing with right now. And I really hope that helps.
Thank you. Someone has commented your live transcription yesterday was epic. Mm-hmm. What software do you use in your sketches, and is it commercially available or is it custom made?
Awesome question that I get all the time. And I've actually got a YouTube video on my Nifty Fox creative channel all about this. So I'll give you a brief overview here, but then you can check out the video for a more in-depth view. So I use a piece of software called Procreate on an iPad, and that's it costs about £9 and you own it for life. And it's the best kind of sketching software out there. And on the video on the YouTube channel, it goes through kind of alternative softwares if you've got Windows tablet or you're on a budget, and a little bit about how to use it. But it's not custom made, it's available to anybody. It just takes some practice to get used to, and a lot of live scribes to make it look as good as the one did yesterday. But it's called Procreate and it's on the App Store.
Thank you for sharing that, and great to hear it's so accessible and not too expensive either.
No.
Great. So Mark's picked up on what you were saying about being open to diversity, and he'd like to know a bit more about why being more open to diversity is so important in what you do.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a really personal question for me, because I wasn't out as a gay woman until I was in my early 20s, and that does a lot of kind of, and I'm not particularly, I'm not ancient or anything. I wasn't living in the 50s, but even, when I was a kid, it was really taboo to be gay. So for me, I think being deliberately diverse in my projects, so choosing things that have a cause, so whether that's Black Lives Matter, or there's a lot of stuff around gender violence at the moment with the Sarah Everard case, which has kind of really touched me, as I'm sure it has a lot of women. It's really important for me that people are given a platform and a voice to show others out there that might be in the same position as them, that they're not alone. And I think I spent a lot of my 20 years, my initial 20 years on the planet feeling very alone, and kind of like the only gay in the village, if you like. And so, that's why I choose projects that have that kind of very strong social conscience, and why I try and get information into the hands of people that aren't normally available, or aren't normally not normally having the ability to kind of access it, because I felt like I was one of those people that just didn't know anything about the world out there really, and that gay people existed, and I wasn't crazy or wrong or normal or abnormal, sorry. So yeah, that's kind of my driver, really. It's a very personal need to try and open the world up for people and make it a little less lonely and a little less disadvantaged to certain groups.
And in terms of, overcoming, I guess, the challenges that you've faced, how much do you think, building resilience and learning from that has had an impact on, your career?
100%. And I'm really glad you mentioned resilience, because I think it came up yesterday as well. And I really resonated with that. Like, I've had to learn how to be different versions of myself, based on, health, life, work. And that's a big part of resilience, isn't it, really? It's bounce back ability. So, I've had lemons handed to me a few times in life, and I think I do myself a disservice, because I don't think I would describe myself as a resilient person, because I'm quite anxious and I get very emotional and upset about stuff, and I take things to heart and really mull over them for a long time. But actually, I couldn't be where I am now if I didn't have some gumption and some resilience about me. So I think, yeah, resilience is a thread through the majority of my life, to be honest. But I think it's also recognizing my own patterns. So part of my resilience now is recognizing how I'm making things worse for myself. And I think that's what life's rich tapestry of a journey is about. It's learning how to unscrew yourself, basically. And I think that's a big part of resilience, is learning how to look after yourself and move forward and keep learning. I think that the last 5 years from me running this business has been the most intense in terms of personal growth, and kind of learning, because you just have to do it every day. So yeah, and I think, even today, I had a panic attack this morning, was in tears about 3 hours ago about something, and then now I'm here doing this for you. So you kind of have to learn how to roll with the punches and kind of let go of stuff quite quickly. Yeah, I hope that's a little bit of an insight into my psyche anyway.
It certainly is. And thank you for sharing with us, Laura, because I do think it's really beneficial for the researchers listening and watching this to actually, see that everyone that is speaking to them is human, and, everybody has their own challenges and issues to face. And hearing about how, you manage all of these different things, it doesn't stop you.
No, and I think you have to kind of, I think I've spent a lot of, I keep saying my 20s is like, it's a kind of terrible time for guys that are listening. In your 20s, it's wonderful, it's great, but you'll realize in your 30s how much stuff you did that you didn't need to. But I think I spent a lot of time trying to not be me, and got really frustrated that I was this anxious person that had all these personality traits, that was an introvert. And now it's about how you can recognize that that's part of yourself and use it as your superpower. So even though that I dislike the fact that I can be quite anxious and stuff affects me really physically, and I'm quite sensitive, it actually makes me really good at what I do. And I think I was chatting to Josie and Lucinda before the call about, how can you harness that and parts of yourself to your advantage. And I think, as I've mentioned self-awareness quite a lot, but it's so crucial in whatever you choose to do, because the more you learn about yourself, the more you can harness what you're about to your advantage. So yeah, absolutely. Even though I wish some days I wish I wasn't all these things, but actually all of these things that have happened to me in the way I am has meant that I'm successful now. So love yourself, because you'll go far if you can.
I want to return to some of the questions that were submitted in advance. There are a few people that ask questions, I think particularly around, your role and the whole creative side.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, are there any particular subjects that are difficult to make visually interesting?
Economics. I find economics really challenging to make interesting. Not that it isn't interesting. I think it's just quite so complex that it's that it can be a bit of a minefield to represent it clearly visually. And anything kind of, maths can be really interesting, but hard if you focus on the numbers all the time, if that kind of makes sense. I'd say the social sciences and kind of the arts are easier because the concepts are easier to kind of wrap your head around. But I think some of the more rewarding projects are those that are really hard. So I've done some in the biomedical sciences recently around COVID that have been really interesting. I've done some with physicists that, again, was really hard concepts that are quite removed from my kind of sphere of knowledge. But because I could look at them with a fresh pair of eyes and kind of ask the stupid questions as to, well, what on earth does that mean? It means that you actually create something that's really visually appealing and really accessible, because, I was the idiot, if you like, at the beginning of that project. So I'd say, numbers and anything kind of really hardcore physicsy and economicsy can be quite challenging, but always surmountable, and actually the end product's really interesting and works because it's been so hard.
That's interesting. So someone else is asking, when research participants use visual illustrations to narrate experiences, how does one analyze it?
Okay, so this is more of a methodological question. So I used to do a lot of interview coding in my previous life as a researcher, and it becomes the same kind of coding, if you like. So there's visual methods within sociology that you could apply here. So it's about looking at the meaning of the image, and actually what I would tend to do with the research participants now is walk through that analysis with them. So producing the image isn't a one-way process, it's actually a two-way, because any image needs some words and some direction to make sense of it. So I think actually it's in the doing of the image, the thinking within the inking, if you like, that helps you code it and helps make sense of it. Because for research participants, that might be a really natural way for them to communicate and far easier than using words. And it makes a lot of the research participants that I've worked with, no matter where they are in society or however they identify, it actually makes them far more articulate about their experience because they've had to think about that visual. So to kind of to make sense of it and to analyze it has to be done with the participant next to you, because they have to walk through it and you have to ask questions. So it's a very time-consuming process, but it's far more rewarding because the hierarchy is flat. You're not forcing your coding, you're not trying to put your constrictions on something and take words out of their mouth or put words in their mouth, because you're doing it together. So it's a much more co-produced effort. So I hope that answers the question, but in some, it's more time consuming, but it has to be done together. It has to be co-produced.
Great, thank you.
No worries.
So we're coming towards the end of the time that we've got for today. One question that came in was around what advice you would give our PhD students who are watching this and listening about what they should be doing to enhance their employability more broadly, or whether that's towards a career like yours, or whether that's just generally in terms of developing their skills and experience.
Number one, focus on your PhD. You're super busy, super stressed, really pressurized people already. So whatever you do choose to do to improve your employability, make sure it fits and is energy enhancing rather than draining on what you're already doing. The second thing I'd say is network. Get out there and speak to people. You might not have any idea what you want to do yet, but go to events, broaden your mind, think about kind of career paths a bit like this one that you may never have even considered, and just give your mind a kind of little playground exercise of just seeing what's out there. So, be open to going to events and chatting to people that you wouldn't normally chat to. And then if you do have something that you're interested in, or you have a focus for where you want to go, again, reach out and talk to people. You'll be really surprised how easy it is to kind of land a coffee with somebody that you really admire if you just show willing and also offer them something in return. So think about how your PhD research could be used by a person that you want to kind of contact and get in touch with. I think, you know, I have people asking me for coffee all the time, and it's actually, it's really flattering. So do, you know, reach out and make that network. But I think the kind of the thread in all of this is connect with people, because you never know when that connection might be handy in 5 years time, 10 years time. You just never know. In terms of developing your skills, just, you know, if you do have a job now alongside your PhD, just get as much training, rinse it for all the training that you can, and always keep an open mind as to what you think you're good at, because that will change. And yeah, I hope that's helpful. So network and go to all the free stuff that you can, and connect with people that have the same values and are like-minded.
Thanks, Laura. I love the fact that you're encouraging people to make contact with other people, and you're saying it from someone who, you know, is quite happy to be contacted and sit and have a coffee with someone, because that's the message I always give. But it's a lot better when it comes from they may be contacting.
We're delicate beasts, entrepreneurs. We love our egos being stroked occasionally. So if somebody says, you know, I want to talk to you, we go, of course you can. Like, it's, yeah, people are more happy to chat to you than you think.
Great.
Oh, we've got a couple of questions.
Yeah, I've just noticed a couple of live chat questions. So when you refer to doing research and visual storytelling, do you mean basically that you're expected to reach conclusions just like a PhD does, but visual storytelling is part of your data collection methods?
Yeah, so for me now, go on, sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to add the last bit, which is about what is the output your clients expect from you?
Yeah, so the last part of the question kind of relates to the first, because I'm not doing the research anymore. I'll be brought on as if I'm involved in the research process, it's usually part of co-production. So the research team will have their methods, they'll know what they want, but they might not have the visual storytelling skills to make that happen. So now when I work with clients, I work with them to facilitate that session, provide all of the visual frameworks and tools to help them walk their research participants through a visual activity, and then work with them to analyze it. Some of the end product from me might be the illustrations, kind of a synthesized version of the illustrations done by their participants, or it might be a visual summary of all of the analysis, or it might be even contributing some writing to that report and that research project. So the output can really vary when it comes to kind of the research process itself.
Thank you. In our last few seconds, Laura, you talked about the future. What do you think the future holds for you in the next few years?
Well, I'd like to be married, number one, because I was meant to get married last year, so I will be a married woman.
Let's hope so.
Yeah, fingers crossed. In terms of Nifty Fox, where the future kind of lies, I'm writing a book at the minute, and I've just submitted a trademark application. So there'll be a much bigger training arm of Nifty Fox, to kind of train lovely PhD students and early career researchers like you to become academics who are far more visually aware and better at communicating their research beyond the ivory tower. So I think I will take more of a training role, and I'll potentially employ more people to do the creative business management side of things, just because the training side really lights me up. But I also think we'll still be committed to doing good work with good people for good causes. But then I say all this, and you never know, I might get run over by a bus tomorrow. So who knows? But I think it's much more, the more you do something, the more you grow your business, the more you realize what your purpose is and what you're about. And I think I have got this fundamental belief that I can change academia for the better, and change it from its current, or part of its current mission, to kind of publish papers, and put it much more about getting research into the hands of people that need it. And my route to do that is to train people on how to think like a visual thinker, and how to communicate like a marketeer and not a researcher. So I think that's where the future lies.
Well, thank you, Laura. Everything you've told us today has been really inspiring and interesting, and I'm sure everyone is really enthused and motivated by the different messages you've given, whether this is a career path they want to pursue for themselves or whether they want to, consider other options. But it's been great to talk to you. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, just to finish up there, thank you ever so much, both Rachel for chairing this session and Laura. It's been incredible to hear in much more detail about kind of your journey, Laura, because we've been working together kind of for about 3 years now. Yeah, but you don't always get to hear all those things. So thank you ever so much for your honesty and for sharing with us today. And I'm always completely awestruck with what you develop after every session, so thank you. And you will actually be joining us for the next 2 sessions and illustrating our next 2 speakers, so thank you for that. Just to let everyone know, we will be sharing an edited version of the recording as soon as possible, and we will also share Laura's illustration that she's done herself at some point as well in the next couple of weeks. But just a big thank you to you all for attending, and for those of you who submitted questions either beforehand or during the session just now. And yes, if you're joining us for our next couple of sessions, we'll look forward to welcoming you then. But yeah, thank you ever so much, everybody, and take care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.